Welcome to Not Just Ads, the show where B2B brands discover how creator-led content drives pipeline, builds trust, and grows long-term brand equity. Each episode, we speak with business leaders, founders, and creators who are defining their categories. I'm your host, Marcus Sherwin, and this is the creator economy for B2B. Hello and welcome today to Not Just Ads, the creator economy for B2B. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Will McStay. Will leads account management in Momentum Data. They are a B2B company based out of Barcelona with a global remit, and they've been in the space for a number of years. So I'm really looking forward to getting into the conversation today. Will, thanks a lot for joining us on the show.
Yeah, and thank you for having me, Marcus.
Great, because we used to work together a number of years ago, and you moved on since then, Criteo, so did I. But where you are is in an interesting space. Maybe for the listener, you could just tell us a little bit about Momentum Data, what it is you do. Give us a bit of an overview of the company, and just kind of just a better understanding for the audience of the business and the category that you're in.
Sure, yeah, definitely. Yeah, we both made the jump, right, from B2C to B2B. And it's been a very interesting one. So Momentum Data, when I explain it in short to people, I normally just say we help people get the most out of their LinkedIn, and that being on like an individual basis. So we help amplify individual voices on the platform more than helping companies at a central level, and really try and make sure that they can communicate their own opinions, what they want to be talking about, but also then the brand's opinions as well, and kind of focus on that human element of marketing and the human-to-human side of things.
Great, yeah. It's an exciting space to be in as well, because I think B2B as a whole, it always kind of gets a bit of a bad rap in terms of what people kind of think of, like, you know, they kind of think generally B2B, I think, is kind of seen as maybe more conservative, cautious, but it's probably making some changes around that as well. Like, what, from when you joined Momentum Data and from the companies that you work with, is there any kind of trends, differences that you see over the last number of years that people are approaching in terms of when they think about marketing in B2B companies?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it is true that maybe you could say it's a bit behind B2C. I think on average there is a bit more innovation in that space, and quite often B2B follows behind, but I think it does present its own set of challenges, right? So in B2C, you're quite often dealing with much larger data sets. For example, in our old job, right, we were optimizing on conversions all the time. And then you go into the B2B space and someone says to you, we have no conversion. And that was, or like, we have no online conversion. We have no data for you on that. We, can give you some conversion data like 3-4 years down the line, after 3 or 4 years, but other than that, that's our sales cycle. So I think it's slower, and you could say slower or less innovative, but I think that's in response to more the challenges, the lack of data that's available in the space. That was really quite surprising, right, when I first moved over, because as account manager in our old job, it was very much about watching Google Analytics very closely, watching the data. And you do have data in B2B, but it's definitely not the same, right?
No, it's true. And it's very much black and white. The other, you can kind of see the conversion, and you have a couple of levers, but you have very much like tangible data of like you put in X and you get out Y. I think in B2B, when you have a longer sales cycle, there's always this variability of like, okay, what influenced what, how long is the cycle, and so on. But from some of the companies that you work with, who do you think are like that you go in and let's just say a typical company? I won't ask you to name companies, but when you work with them and you kind of look at, let's say they have some team members that are doing LinkedIn and they're active, but okay, it's not really a strategy play. It's more like, look, they post a bit on LinkedIn and they kind of just like whatever the news is of the company. What do you kind of look at in terms of how to get them more effective from a strategic point of view?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a few things. I think we always find out what we start with usually is an individual rep who doing their job, they always feel that they're not doing enough on LinkedIn, almost everyone, because of the time constraints that they have and how they're working day to day. And what they are doing is reposting company content, and that feels like they're doing their bit, right? However, of course, when you repost company content, you post it to your network, and quite often the network of the people that we work with, if they haven't spent time building their network in the space, quite often ends up being their colleagues, their friends, their school buddies, you know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of something we focus on first. Is like, how do we build actually that network and that audience of people that can be that content is relevant to, and then we help them try and find a voice, really, because reposting company content ad nauseum, there's lots of advocacy platforms that help you do it, but that sort of content, LinkedIn is quite saturated with it, I think, as well. And it also, for me, very importantly, isn't the voice of the person that we're actually working with.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to say, okay, what's your opinion on this? Like, how can we get you across? Because your voice is going to be a lot stronger than your company's.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, you can kind of see now in the last 18 months is like the rise of kind of the creator, one thing, but like someone that's very active on LinkedIn internally within the company. And then externally is obviously the creators as well. And you see, like, especially in sales functions, people being very active and kind of even creating this kind of like, what would I say? It's like well, to some extent it's a business model in itself, but in other ways it's like there is a kind of maybe a halo effect is the wrong word, but there is something whereby the brand is getting some of the equity in that in terms of when they're posting. But do you see it with like when the companies that you work with, when you kind of try and get them to find their voice and so on? What are, like, apart from the time constraints, are there any other challenges in like kind of trying to sell that to the company as the value piece that like that can drive business impact, and like any kind of people even you could share with the audience of like quick wins of like, if they're going, yeah, thought leadership is important, we know LinkedIn is important, but we can't really prove what it does internally. Is there anything that you kind of lean on normally when you get that?
Can I stop for 1 second?
Yeah, that was a long-winded question.
It's been bugging me that I've got a bit of fluff here as well, so I just want to try and get rid of it if I can.
No worries.
No worries at all. Can I jump straight back in?
Yeah,
or would you
yeah,
like to read
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think when you're talking of the challenges, I think there is the challenges more generally, and maybe I can address with the reps as well, and how you find your voice on LinkedIn. I think it's difficult. I think it's a platform that, because it straddles company and personal, and there is a lot of content out there, let's say the cringe LinkedIn content as well, maybe like that, making links that don't really exist. I think a lot of people, particularly if we work largely with kind of senior salespeople, a lot in the industrial space as well, maybe they're engineers, they kind of look at LinkedIn and think, oh, that's not my area. I don't want to engage with that. So definitely it is a challenge, but normally when we're then taking them through that and show the power, I mean, it's an amazing platform still for sure, and you can do so much with it. And when we take them through that and kind of then eventually show them when they're bought in, they're usually really enthusiastic about finding that voice and sharing their day-to-day, because in the end, like, a lot of these guys are also, guys and girls, are out there on the field, right? And that's one of the best places to make content for LinkedIn, actually sharing what you're doing day to day. It's a treasure trove. So that's definitely very interesting. You mentioned there was a challenge for brands as well towards the end of the question.
Yeah. So what I was alluding to there is the challenge sometimes, or sometimes the risk. I don't really see it's a risk, but some people foresee that if they have their staff sharing a lot on LinkedIn and they gain a lot of follower, it's like there's a risk then that they may be poached somewhere, some other opportunities may come up, and then all that equity that's connected potentially to their brand or their service or the company can be just brought somewhere else very easily based on this person that has a large presence on LinkedIn. Do you ever see brands kind of flagging that to you as like, this could be risky?
Oh, 100%. And I think it's a risk. When you invest in an individual, any investment you do, training, investment on their online profile, of course, there's a risk that employees are a flight risk in the end, of course. But what I would say, and what we always talk about in response to that is, okay, however, these people are the voice of your brand, and I always refer back a lot to what LinkedIn actually is and what it was built as and what it then became, and same for most social media networks as well, right? There's a book called I think it's called the Clue Train Prophecy or something like this, but it's very much focusing on social networks for people to people. Let me look this up really quickly. It's going to bug me otherwise. The Clue Train Manifesto, it's called.
Okay.
And so that was written in '99, and it was talking a lot about what social networks are and their people to people. And they made a series of predictions, and they said companies are going to have to start to talk like people on these social networks, which I think with like Ryanair, for example, on their Twitter, you see quite a lot of. And brands are going to have to find ways for their individual contributors and people that are selling their brand in the end to be a voice for that brand, because company voices just resonate less. And that then, it's amazing. They made like 95 prophecies and like 90 of them have come true in 26 years later. So yeah, I think that's like, if people are saying, well, it's a risk that people are going to leave, I think, well, for me, it's just a risk while they're there. I mean, they're not leaving now. They're still there. So invest in this. It is an opportunity. And then if they move on, like, you invest in the next person, I guess. I mean, it's not ideal, but for me, it's a bigger risk not to do it.
Yeah, you're probably leaving a lot on the table by not really enabling or encouraging people there, because it's making their job easier. And if their job is easier, then obviously the company is going to benefit from that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And a social network is a network of people. So finding ways to find human voices, to me, has to be done, even if those voices will move on after.
Yeah, I think it's like the overall mission is like kind of to connect to opportunity, and that's the thing of like really getting to connecting to that opportunity. Curious then as well, so like from some of the companies that you work with, let's say they're posting on LinkedIn, you go in, what are some of the things that you report back onto them? You go in, you do a diagnosis, you say, look, this is your ICP, these are your TAM, you should be focusing on these type of topics. When you're kind of going back to them then, and let's say the sales cycles are long and there's pressure internally to kind of prove the proof of concept and stuff, what are some of the leading metrics that you look at to kind of give people actually, you're going in the right direction here?
Yeah, so I think network relevance is definitely one of those. So looking at the kind of thing I mentioned about the participants, how much of their network is actually in the target market for the product they're trying to sell, raising that a lot so we get more visibility. The kind of visibility metrics on postings and different content that they're sharing as well, we can definitely point to. We do some click outs as well, some bits of click out work, and some tracking of that. I'm sure you're aware in paid or organic, the process of click out to this page and then put in your email and sign up to receive 20 newsletters a week is still very much the standard, but also difficult to drive results from my experience. But we do a bit of it because you want to fit in a little bit into the existing structures, right? But I'm always wary of that. Conversations started on the platform as well is sometimes a nice one. Yeah.
And then when you're looking at that, then do you kind of have to stay quite close then to the ICPs or the people that you're working with and say, kind of going like to get that qualitative feedback as well, I guess, of like, hey, I got these DMs, or hey, I'm working on this deal and such, and I went and they saw my LinkedIn post. Because I don't know if you see this, but like even with people inside LinkedIn that I used to work with and would post regularly, and they would say, one particular colleague I remember, he works with the public sector in Spain, and he used to tell me he posts regularly, but his posts would get some engagement, but then whenever he was going to meetings, they were always saying, I really like your content on LinkedIn, but they're not commenting, they're not engaging, but they're consuming. And I think that's like kind of, I don't know if you see that in the sectors that you're in as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've had clients talk about my LinkedIn content in meetings, There was one particularly that came up in a meeting with a prospect where I was talking about, like you have some of these bots on LinkedIn that are like heavily automating,
Yep.
right? Like not what any of us really want, and they're quite often connect with you and then straight away, hello, would you like to book a 20-minute meeting about this? And I posted a cartoon of someone doing that in the gentleman's toilets. I'm not sure if we can touch on that in the podcast, but imagine then someone, comes straight up to you into your personal space, right? And then talks about that. And he said that was a really strong visual for me of like what we've been doing when we've been doing that. So it is really strong when you get people like engaging with that message. And as you mentioned, that's probably the kind of thing that maybe brands would be a bit nervous about.
Yep.
Kind of putting that humorous spin on things, even though it is aligned with the message. So I understand reluctance and for sure to kind of empower individuals to have those conversations. But I think it's also, it's a question of trust as well sometimes as well, right?
No, for sure.
People.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you a bit about email as well. So you outside the day job as well, you have another gig that you're running for luxury brands, and email is a focus on that, if I'm not wrong. No.
Yeah, I think what we're finding is with hyper luxury brands. So we're talking brands that are catering to the top 0.5% in terms of income. They can build quite strong email databases, and they have extremely strong brand loyalty, especially in the kind of niches we're working with, like jewelry, fashion, and that kind of thing. So, but broadly, as a mass channel, I have to admit I am not a fan at the moment at all, and I don't think it's driving a huge amount of demand. Open rates are going down. But in the luxury space, we're finding it very strong. But then the question is, how do we then capture them in the first place and get them receiving the mails?
Yeah, I know what you mean. How do you find it with B2B then? Not necessarily just emails, but like DMs and stuff. Like what you mentioned there earlier on, the connect and pitch is obviously that doesn't work. We know that doesn't work, but curious to see from what you see and what from working with your clients as well. Like, what do you see working well in terms of like direct messages on LinkedIn or like even cold outreach, anything like that? Like, there's no one size fits all. I know that, but from what you see now, especially with AI as well, what do you see that's kind of been more effective now than before?
Yeah, there's I'm sure you're aware of it, but there's definitely a narrative in the market right now around like personalization, AI-driven personalization, get a different message to every single person, this sort of thing. For me, I tell my clients often that I find personalization is as much about making the tone personal and writing to people like they're human as much as it is about finding the exact thing that they might be interested in. Because in the end, even the technology is 100% there to do this super well, right? To individualize every single outreach that you do. The data that supports that is quite often for me then quite limited. So I feel that I receive a lot of these kind of AI coded messages, and it says something like, hey Will, I saw your post on this, this and this, then summarizes the post back to me and then said, let's have a call. I'm like, well, this is not relevant to me really. And like, so, and I can tell that it's written like that, it's written by an AI, and actually what I want from someone is for them to be polite to me, to clearly state why they're reaching out, the business case for them reaching out, maybe a slight personal touch, if there is some personal things that maybe they want to chuck in, okay. So we really focus on, I mean, for example, signing off a message with something like best regards from the city you're from, for example. These are still human touches, really help without the need for some complex technology that is producing something that isn't that valuable, I think, in a person-to-person communication. So I love the tech. I love where it's going. I think it's super interesting. I'm not sure that the data that's required to make this work is there, because I'm seeing from my clients, I think everyone seems to be thinking, everyone's going on their LinkedIn and saying, I need this B2B software to do this, like, whereas actually who's really doing that? Like
Nobody, yeah.
Not really anyone. So your intent signals are always going to be a bit limited. And I'd say only use them when you're confident that you can create a good narrative from that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there seems to be kind of two trails of thought. Like, and I know a few people. I don't know if you know Richard Moore. He does like a kind of a sales training, and he has a big community. He's been on LinkedIn for a long time, but I know Richard, and he was kind of saying, he's like, look, I don't believe in automation at all, and it's kind of if you're selling anything that has a high ticket value, you like automation is. But as a byproduct, it's not really going to be effective because people don't feel like they want to be part of a sequence or something like that. Maybe it works for other things, but from what he was saying is like kind of the DM should be like, it should be something where you're just trying to get a reply from somebody, and that it's their day is busy, but you just want to get a reply and kind of like be very focused on that. And then obviously then once you can kind of see and so on, and there's kind of a conversation going. And I think that at scale is kind of challenging to do, but it is effective. But then the other side of the argument is, and you've probably seen a couple of companies, I think there's one in Barcelona that's grown quite a lot, but is the whole GTM engineering play of like kind of workflow sequences, and they're prolific on LinkedIn. And the promise is kind of like, you can, once you get somebody that knows these workflows really well, it can be automated, and you can bring in as much leads, and then people can work the leads and so on, and it replaces the BDR function. And there's companies like Clay that have done very well. Just curious to see from where you sit on that, and where you see, like, from your organization as a whole, or from the companies that you talk with as well, of like kind of the GTM engineering part and like kind of automating it. Have they had any kind of uplifts? I'm talking to some people and they see yes, and then others are kind of saying we can do it, but if it's anything high ticket, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah, I think there's a place for automation personally. Maybe LinkedIn might disagree with that, I'm sure, but I think there is a place, because in the end, people do need to save time. I feel that and I know exactly the company you're talking about. We don't need to mention them.
Yeah.
Mention them by name, and I think they're doing a lot of really valuable work. And I am amazed. What's really powerful for me is the way they've turned all of their leaders into thought leaders in the space.
Yeah.
And that's how they've then managed to grow.
Yeah.
So quickly. And I've seen them use thought leadership ads on LinkedIn really well as well.
Yep.
With that personal touch. Hey, I had lunch with this guy, etc. I still think, for me, like, what sometimes is forgotten, and not speaking particularly about this company, but in general in that GTM engineering space, is the humans that you're marketing to and the humans that you're marketing for, and what human behavior actually means. And again, people get very excited about the workflow and the automation and how you do it, and then you pull in this data from here and you do this. And I'm sitting there going, okay, that's a really cool process, and I love that build, but does it add to the message that I'm trying to get across? And I think that's I don't see either or personally, like there's kind of two sides that you mentioned. I think it's like automate in the right place, but always with a real knowledge and understanding of what that message comes out as and how you can engage that person. But not to the extent where you're building like extreme workflows and bringing in data from here and there and everywhere. I don't think the data sources are there for it, and I don't think it's an engineering problem. I think it's a marketing problem. So I feel that when you attach too many GTM engineers to a marketing problem, sometimes that can be, it can lead to outcomes that you don't expect. Exactly like the message I mentioned.
Yeah. No, I think there's definitely it's definitely a trend, the whole GTM engineering role. And I guess probably stuff on the back end, probably there is maybe some, there's a huge amount of value there, but I think doing it to automate to the end user probably is not going to have a really positive sequence if you feel that, you're just in this workflow sequence of events and you're going through the motions. Maybe on the back end, if you're validating certain, say, call conversations, or even, I don't know, doing analysis on, like, if you have a huge amount of reps on your CRM and you're going through data, there's probably a lot of value in that sense. But yeah, it's an interesting play. I don't mind naming the company anyway. CIQ, Cold IQ is the one, I think, that, and then there's another one, I think, Webflows. But yeah, they seem to be doing, at least according to LinkedIn and the stuff that they're doing, they've done really well about the kind of build it in public approach, and how they've done that. But it seems to be a play for companies. But like what you say, I think it's hard to see when you're selling high ticket stuff of like what the personalization at scale and what it can replace and so on as well.
Yeah, I see it really as again, I'm going to, sorry if I'm banging the same drum, but for me, it's about the data input, right? If you have a really strong intent signal and a really specific intent signal that is scalable, then I like that. I think that sort of thing can, and in the end, email automation, LinkedIn automation, wherever it is, some level of automation. Sometimes, if you're always very compelling and you still come across as a human, like, I think, okay, the thing is, especially in high ticket items, that intent data doesn't really tend to exist. Not really, like, we're looking for a new cloud provider. No one's posting that. No one's putting that to tender. No one, that's not the process. So you end up in this kind of weird position where you're trying to pick stuff from what you can in order to make messaging without going, what am I trying to do? What's the message I'm trying to actually get across here?
No, it's very true, and then you can kind of get lost in the ad stack and all as well. So there is a lot of power there, but I think it really depends on what it is, who the end user is, and if you have that intent signal, like you mentioned as well. Maybe you could share a little bit as well, like what's in terms of like anything that you're thinking about in 2026, kind of what are some of the new things that you're seeing down the line, any kind of trends specifically in B2B from the clients that you work with, from momentum data as a whole, anything you see that's kind of changed in the last, say, 6 months to previous years in B2B?
Can I say the two letters that's on everyone's lips right now is AI, right? And the usage and installation of AI is definitely something that in the enterprise space, I think everyone's got a lot of FOMO about. And obviously, particularly in the enterprise space, you've got a lot of people answering to investors and answering to boards. And I think we've seen, right, over the last couple of years, it has driven layoffs, reorgs, that sort of thing. So definitely that's changing the landscape a little bit. A lot. In my opinion, I think it's more a case of what it can do rather than what it's actually doing right now that's changing the landscape, because enterprise companies have a lot of compliance issues. They have to go through a lot of processes, and broadly right now what we're seeing is a lot of companies have installed like an internal chatbot, for example, but they've based it on an old ChatGPT model. They've white labeled it 2 models ago, and 6 months later, all that work is out, So definitely we're seeing a lot of FOMO and people trying to catch up and put AI into their stack in the right places, which is definitely very interesting, and definitely in this space, kind of what we've just been talking about, right? Like what kind of marketing content do you generate using AI? How do you make it save you time without turning you into a robot, or without making your content unappealing? So it is very interesting time, I think, in the enterprise space. Like, again, maybe you would see a slower adoption in enterprise B2B versus like an SME B2C company, for example, but that's natural, as the process is to make sure that they're compliant and doing the right thing and brand safe, kind of slow things down a bit. But it's definitely still a huge change, and people are very excited, right, about what they can do with it as well.
Yeah.
Sometimes, to be fair, without too much of an understanding, like, I think what's really interesting about it as well. Sorry to keep going on about this as well,
please.
But I mean, the journey of AI is 40, 50 years now already. That we were talking about as in our last company as well, using AI a lot to control different bidding structures, to choose what kind of creatives to use, all this kind of thing. So I think for people in the digital industry, it's been around a long time and a word we've known a lot. What definitely has changed is the access to it, and the fact that the language model now enables everyone to do some kind of coding and that sort of thing. So this is very different, and yeah, it's creating a lot of buzz. Maybe not quite so much activity off the back of that buzz yet, but I'm sure it's coming in 2026.
Yeah, I think with a lot of release, like it seems basically the most seems to be the distribution more so than actually the capability, because each model is catching up with each other, and then even Chinese models that are being promoted here, like, are much probably more cost effective and all. So you kind of look like 5 years down the line, what's going to be the edge is like whoever has using a particular model. So I suppose if you have big companies that are integrated with enterprises, it's harder then to compete with those. But you also then look at, like, okay, if you're like ChatGPT and your customer B2C more to say, it's like, okay, how do you differentiate yourself if you have a cheaper model then? And so it's an interesting space to be in. One final question before we finish up, from your own team and personally then in Momentum Data, like, is there any kind of things that you're using it for that you find that it's saving you time, or that you're seeing kind of uplifts and efficiencies and stuff?
Processing data and analysis. So I think for sure is, to me, been the strongest case so far. So we have used AI to look at some anonymized data. We've built like a BI kind of agent within Gemini, and that has taken over a fair bit of like the manual analysis that we were doing. On the limited data that we do have, right? We don't have tons of data like in B2C, but driving insights from that has been really powerful so far at the start of this year, and a really interesting new tool we have in our toolkit to make sure that we can give the best results for everyone. And I think like classification as well. So on that, like, let's say when we want to do an analysis, let's say we want to analyze a series of posts, how well they've done, in order to revisit and retest our best practices. What we needed to do before was to like look through the series of posts and then go, okay, this one I would classify like this one I'd classify like this, you know, copying and pasting things into character counters, this sort of thing. Whereas now we can very much give like AI a list of URLs, and it can go and like say, okay, and hit a series of labels, and it can go and do that for us. So I think synthesizing data and labeling is a really, really strong use case. We're being very careful with content generation, extremely careful. Ideation is very useful. So for example, I've done something we've launched in the last kind of 6 months or so, is what we'd call our content interviews. So to help people find their voice on the platform, I'm asking them a series of questions about what do they do day to day, what's their work like, what's their opinions. If I then throw that transcript into AI and say, can you give me some ideas, some content pillars, some possible LinkedIn post titles that we can then start to ideate around with that individual, that's very powerful as well. But I don't want, we are fighting strongly against people throwing things into ChatGPT and saying, write some content for me, because it's just
and it's spotted as well. You can really spot the voice is very, and I think even more so now as well, people can spot it. But it doesn't mean you can't use AI, like even Whisper Flow, which is basically taking your own voice and then you can tidy it up so it is your voice and you don't have any spelling mistakes and stuff. I think tools like that are good, but if you're just using AI and going like, okay, give me content and thing and then post it, it's very obvious, and it seems to be as well. I think the thing now is the next phase of like keeping the tone of voice, but maybe creating ideas like what you mentioned as well. Yeah, no, really interesting.
Authentic, right? Like it's as in going back to that human to human.
Exactly.
LinkedIn has become. If someone else is, if you've got a robot writing it for you, it's not your voice. So
Yeah, no, 100%. Just before we finish up then, so if people want to find out more about Momentum Data, about content that you share, obviously on LinkedIn, you're very active, no doubt, but anything up and coming, whether it's, you mentioned you have a webinar series, I think you do, on Momentum Data, anything else that the audience should know about Momentum Data?
Yeah, sure. And please do follow myself on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I'm
we'll
Will
put the
McStay,
details in the show notes as well.
And yeah, we do a series of what we call short deep dives, with the theory that you can spend 10 minutes once a month, more or less, and we dive into a topic that's relevant in the current space. That's led by our CEO, and yeah, that's I think otherwise. Our website's momentumdata.com, but we're generally active on LinkedIn. We practice what we preach, so yeah, please do feel free to follow along, and yeah, we'd love to chat B2B and LinkedIn and with anyone that wishes to.
Great. Okay, well, Will, thanks a lot for joining us on the show. We'll put all the details in the show notes as well.
Cheers. Thanks so much, Marcus. See ya.
Cheers.